Thank you so much for coming in. We're just going to start by, I'm just going to ask you to introduce yourself and then just tell me a little something about yourself.
You go ahead.
Okay. My name is Arliss Liggett. I'm married to George Cuff, and we have a management consulting business together. We live in Spruce Grove. We have 3 daughters and 6 grandchildren. We are active in our community. We are active in our church in our community. I've had experience as a photographer. I have done lots of mentoring with women, and we share a love of children's camp in Romania, which we are building and have been for the last 21 years.
Wow. Fantastic.
I'm George Cuff. I'm a husband, a father, a grandfather, a management consultant, and do work with municipalities across Canada, with provincial governments. Have done that for the last 38 years or so, and haven't decided to retire yet. Moses started when he was 80. I'm just getting warmed up.
Very good. Very good. Very exciting indeed. Lovely. So how long have you guys known Jerry for then?
About 30 years?
30 years approximately.
30 years. And have you been, now how did you get to know him then?
So I was at the Royal Bank, one of my early iterations, right out of high school, and in 1968, 69, a guy by the name of Cease Blackburn approached me and said, "You really need to have some life insurance." I can't remember how I first met Cease, other than it was over in Forest Heights area. And in fact, at one point he tried to convince me to become a life insurance agent. And I'm glad I saw the light and said no. And but he ended up, I think, collecting about $5 or $10 a month from me, and that was my first life insurance involvement. And then he eventually introduced us to Jerry 30 years ago.
So 30 years ago. That's great. And so you started to invest with him. What was the decision around that? What made you choose Jerry apart from, certainly Cease saying this is a good guy?
I think that was it. I think Cease gave a good recommendation. We didn't have any other particular alternative at the time that we were looking at. And it was just a comfortable handoff. Cease obviously thought a lot of Jerry and placed a lot of faith and trust in him, and Jerry lived up to all of that. And Jerry was just an easy guy to talk to and relate to. And
It was a good fit, just right from the start.
That's interesting, a good fit. What do you mean by that?
We felt comfortable with Jerry. We felt that we could trust him. He seemed to be a man of integrity, and just easy to talk to about anything, because we've talked about a number of things together, not only our finances, but our lives, our lifestyle, our family. So just easy conversation.
That's really interesting. So he really made a point of trying to get to know
yeah.
you.
He knows us.
Yeah. And so, in terms of his knowledge of investing too, did that come into play?
Yeah, he's he's a very knowledgeable guy. He talks in Greek a lot, and so for people that aren't really particularly interested in the market or any of that, what we're interested in is that our money is being securely invested, and that if we are taking a risk, it's a manageable one, and the older we get, the less the risk. And so he understands all that and has provided good advice. And from our point of view, we probably wouldn't go anywhere else simply because we trust him.
And that's such a big piece, isn't it? There was something you said there, and a couple of pieces that I want to kind of put together and ask you to talk about a little bit, was he's knowledgeable of the industry, but he also knows you.
Yeah.
So there's something special going on there. I think he knows. Well, we trust his judgment. He talks about the things that he researches and why, and he explains to us the details in language that we can understand. Mm-hmm. And then because he gets to know us, he knows what our financial situation is, what we might be interested in, what might be good for us, because he knows us personally, because he's taken the time to really get to know us. He's interested in who we are, not just what our financial status is.
Yeah. And that sets, do you think that sets him apart?
I do.
Yeah. Have you ever considered other choices?
I haven't.
Yeah.
No, not really. We've had other people that we know that are in the business that you could move aside to, and the question always is sort of why would you do that? And unless
Right.
there's some prevailing reason,
Mhm.
I'm not sure why you would. So I guess if there was a major downturn and your investments were all going south, then you might look at it. My view is that the downturn's going to hit every market everywhere, so it has nothing to do with Jerry. What Jerry's going to try to do is help you manage where you're at.
Okay.
And so you either trust that or you don't, and if you don't trust the person, then you'll start pecking away at whatever's happening on a monthly basis.
Right.
And in most investments, you've got to leave them for a length of time, otherwise you don't see any return. You're just constantly looking at the volatility of a market. So,
Mhm.
so for us, he's been very stable. He's always answered questions. He's explains things very thoroughly, and he's a personable person. So it's easy to come in, sit, and shoot the breeze for the first 20 minutes and talk about the things we're really interested in, and the other 20 minutes we talk about the things that he has to ask us about, and get signatures on. So.
And I mean, it sounds like such a special combination of the two, of that knowledge of you, knowledge of the circumstance, and yet it's overlaid in this personable
Yeah.
sort of platform. So how does that impact you when you know you can place your trust in him, that he knows you and is taking you down the right path? What's that allowed for you in your lifestyles?
Well, I think there's comfort in it, because I know that I can phone Jerry anytime and ask silly questions, and he's there to answer them. And I would send my friends to him because I trust him.
Yeah.
And in fact, we have
Mhm.
suggested family members to come and see Jerry.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
When you do that, how do you describe him? When you
I just say he's very easy to talk to, and you don't have to be afraid of asking questions. Just be yourself, and he'll make you feel comfortable. Yeah.
And how's that different than you know what you think other choices might be for people in terms of an investment portfolio?
I don't know. I haven't really had any experience with other people, but I can't imagine that it might be strained or uncomfortable or
Mm-hmm.
maybe difficult to talk about financial circumstances.
Mm-hmm.
But I just feel the comfort here.
So I hear that there's a security. Like I can see you both feeling comfortable in where you're at in your lives. And finance is a part of it. What is that financial piece being in place allowed you to do?
I think it allows us to look at things on a longer term scale. I think it allows us the flexibility of making decisions with relative assurance as much as one can be, that your investments are being at least properly managed, and that all things being equal, you're being properly treated and respected and so on. So I think it just gives you more assurance in terms of the day-to-day business that you're doing. I mean, quite frankly, neither one of us are particularly interested in investments. It's not a language that either one of us would talk at home.
Mm-hmm.
We do it every so often, and the only time we do it is when we come in to see Jerry.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, if that's the case, and if we're a relatively unsophisticated investor that doesn't really like the language and doesn't spend their day looking at stock markets and so on, then you have to put a whole lot of trust and assurance in whoever you're
Right.
dealing with.
Mm-hmm.
And if there was ever any sense that was not in good hands, then you would be constantly on the phone checking out
Double-checking.
where are we at and why are we at where we're at and so on.
Mm-hmm.
I think with Jerry there's a calmness and an assurance and a trust, and you develop into a friendship, and so I mean we've known him for 30 years, so it's been a good relationship.
Mm-hmm. I'm hearing that. That's
And we're
fantastic.
indebted to Cease for having introduced us. And I mean, it's not that you couldn't find somebody else, because you can always find somebody else. The question is whether or not you'd find somebody else that you connect with and that you trust and that you build up a linkage with, and a sense of not co-ownership, but a sense that this person's actually interested in what we're doing. So
Partnership.
a partnership, and it's a healthy process and a healthy place for us to be. So I can't imagine us having done that with somebody else. I'm not saying it's impossible, but you've heard of all kinds of people that have led people astray or have gone down the wrong path, or they've got out of the business, and you're sitting there thinking, so what am I supposed to do?
Right.
You know, it's like the family doctor that's all of a sudden gone, and you're saying, now I got to start all over again. Well, fortunately with us and Jerry, that he's still a few years younger, so
Yes.
we're good to go.
Yeah, and that's wonderful. And you know, you mentioned your family and so on. So you being in this wonderful, you know, that set financial place, but I also hear you've got vibrant lifestyles. How does that impact your family in a secondary way? This strong relationship you have.
I'm not sure if there's a direct connection. The connection would be a couple of things. One, that we're able to carry on and do other things in our life that we're interested in. So Arliss mentioned our passion for our church and our involvement as Christians in a camp in Romania that we're developing for children in a very suppressed and depressed part of the world.
Yes.
So we have the flexibility of doing that. We in fact use a life insurance policy to help out in one particular way. That wouldn't have had that if we didn't have the advice 30 years ago to get into that. So I think it's given us more flexibility, and in terms of connecting our family, we've just recently recommended a granddaughter to sit down with Jerry and get some financial planning advice and so on. And we wouldn't be doing that with the next generation or two if we didn't have the trust in terms of his relationship to us.
And I think this is the hope in creating the opportunity for you to have a voice, much in the way that Cecil had a voice for you.
Yeah.
That you have a voice to someone who may see your messaging, and it's so difficult to trust somebody. So this is, you know, really impactful.
Yeah.
The kinds of things that you're saying, and yes, you're right. It's about financial security, but what I'm really hearing, the story behind this is it's more than.
Yeah, it's more relationship building. If you don't have that, the financial security becomes a small piece of it. So, in our view, I think the financial security is an end result, obviously, in terms of wanting to make sure that you're wise and you're properly invested and done the best things you could do. But on the other hand, none of that would be worth very much if you did it in such a clinical fashion that you had no relationship connected to it.
Right. So it's nothing a computer algorithm is ever going to replace.
No.
That's right.
Which is interesting.
Yeah. If you turned us over to that, we would turn ourselves over to somebody else.
Be hard to pick, though.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so many choices out there, and yet what I'm hearing is he knows you.
Yeah.
And he knows the market.
The only way we'd be going to somebody else is if Jerry predeceased us and we had to find somebody else.
Yeah.
And we hope that that's not true. So we're good to go.
We should all send him vitamins.
Exactly.
That's right. His name is in my life book, so he can't go before me.
Oh, very good. What do you want? You know, is there anything that we've missed, or do you have any kind of a story that you can share about your interactions with Jerry and some of the things that you've, you know, over 30 years?
No, I mean, you know, you develop a relationship to the point that you want to, like, we'd like to engage Jerry in our mission over to Romania, and that someday he might. We've had him out to the house when we had our young friends that are over there working on the camp. They came back to Canada. We had Jerry along with a bunch of other people at the house to meet him, and he was quite enthused by that. It becomes an extension of family, an extension of closer friends.
Yeah.
So you wouldn't involve or invite Jerry unless you felt that way. Like, we'd be delighted to take him over there. We know that he would be enthused about it because that's, I think, how he approaches life.
Yeah.
And so, you know, it's just the kind of person that you like being with, and there's a natural curiosity to him and a natural enthusiasm that you don't find with everybody. So.
And it sounds like the two of you partner together in the finances, or do you make individual decisions, but or mostly just is it?
I make all the big decisions, we just haven't come to any of them yet, so.
Ah, okay. So they're in progress.
Yeah, there must be one coming before the end of time, but, no, we work on these things together, we
Yeah.
talk about them. We have the same philosophy around sort of, do we invest, don't we invest, all of that. And we make joint decisions in terms of donations or whatever, just because we believe we ought to be unified in those kinds of
Yes.
decisions.
Yeah.
So we're not struggling over something, we're not fighting over something, we don't plan things separately, we talk about what we're doing.
Sounds like a wonderful way to live.
It is.
Great. Is there anything else you would like us or just?
No, we wish Jerry well, we hope that he goes on for a long, long time.
Yeah.
And we hope he's immensely successful, so.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we hope in all of that that he doesn't leave us behind.
I don't think that's going to happen. So that's lovely. Well, thank you so much for taking the time.
You're welcome.
It's a pleasure.